She was rejected while carrying twins. The Alpha King says now he has 3 treasures. The great hall of Ardent Keep glimmered under hundreds of golden torches, their light reflecting off polished obsidian floors. Nobles and courtiers murmured in anticipation as the Alpha King, Kale, sat upon his throne of black iron and silver, a crown of midnight steel resting heavily upon his head. His gaze, sharp and unyielding, swept over the crowd, settling at last on Lyra. Lyra stood at the edge of the hall, her hands pressed gently against the swell of her stomach. She carried twins, the first children of a fallen prince, whispered to have been betrayed and silenced by Kale's predecessors. The court watched with a mix of curiosity and disdain, for they believed a child of that bloodline to be cursed. Kale's eyes darkened as he regarded her. There was a strange familiarity in her stance, a quiet strength that refused to bow, even as the whispers of the court grew louder. Yet, pride and years of unbroken authority weighed upon him, and he could not permit weakness or challenge within his halls. "Step forward, Lyra," Kale commanded, his voice echoing like iron against stone. Lyra obeyed, though each step was measured, careful not to reveal the unease that churned within her. The court fell silent, anticipation coiling like a snake among the lords and ladies. "You bring life into this world," Kale said, his tone cold and measured, "yet you stand under my roof with the blood of a traitor. Do you not understand the danger you carry?" Lyra met his gaze steadily, though her heart raced. "I know the danger, Your Majesty. Yet the children are innocent. They carry no burden of the past except that which I bear for them." A ripple of disapproval passed through the crowd. Murmurs rose like waves, voices questioning, doubting. A noblewoman scoffed audibly, and Kale's gaze pierced her instantly. "This court cannot tolerate weakness," Kale continued. "You who walk among us with the seed of traitors within have no place here. You are rejected." The words fell like a hammer, shattering the fragile quiet in Lyra's chest. Whispers became a roar. Eyes that once showed mild curiosity now glared with contempt. Her cheeks burned, but she did not collapse, though a heavy grief pressed upon her like a shadow. Kale rose from his throne, the motion smooth and commanding, and gestured toward the hall's exit. "Leave this place. Take your burden and vanish from my kingdom. The twins and you will find no refuge here." Lyra turned to leave, feeling the weight of every gaze, every whispered curse, but something inside her refused to bow entirely. Even as her heart quaked, she held her chin high, though the fire in her chest flickered between despair and defiance. The door to the hall closed behind her, the echo of Kale's judgment lingering in the corridors like a specter. The cold night air of Ardent Keep bit at her face as she stepped into the moonlit courtyard. The shadows seemed to lean closer, as if the night itself mourned with her. Lyra walked through the forest path leading to Moonshade Vale, a desolate land shrouded in perpetual mist. The vale was said to be cursed, haunted by the spirits of broken oaths and lost souls. Few dared enter and fewer returned. Yet Lyra pressed on, her resolve hardening. If the kingdom had rejected her, she would carve a sanctuary from the very shadows themselves. As she passed through the vale, she felt the twins stir within her, tiny movements full of life and unspoken promise. A shiver of both fear and awe ran through her. She understood instinctively that the children she carried were no ordinary heirs. They were threads of fate, tied to magic older than the kingdom itself. The mist thickened as she reached the heart of the vale, where gnarled trees bent over the narrow path like guardians of forgotten secrets. It was here that Lyra felt the first whispers, soft and elusive, brushing against her mind like the faintest breeze. "Mother," the voices seemed to murmur, though there was no wind. "Protect us. We are the light." Lyra's breath caught. The voices were distant yet intimate, as if the twins themselves reached out to her, guiding her steps. She sank to her knees in the damp grass, pressing a hand over her stomach, feeling the steady life within her. A tear rolled down her cheek, but it was not entirely one of sorrow. It was a tear of determination. A soft rustle of movement drew her attention. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in robes of deep violet, their face hidden beneath a hood. The air around the figure carried an unfamiliar power, a tingling energy that set the hairs on Lyra's arms on end. "You are far from the palace," the figure said, voice smooth and calm, yet carrying an edge of danger. "And yet your heart is not broken, only burdened. You carry children whose fate is entwined with power beyond your understanding." Lyra rose cautiously, clutching her stomach. "Who are you? Are you friend or foe?" The figure chuckled softly, a sound that echoed in the mist like distant bells. "I am neither. I am a guide, one who sees what others cannot. These twins, they are treasures of the kingdom, though no one here dares call them so. They carry blood of old magic. If you wish, I can help you protect them, but every choice has its price." Lyra hesitated. She could sense the weight of the words, the invisible chains that might bind her children to unknown destinies. Yet the fear in her chest was mingled with hope, fragile but undeniable. "I will not let them suffer," she said firmly, her voice breaking through the mist. "If there is a path that keeps them safe, I will take it." The figure nodded, lifting a hand to reveal a small pendant, its crystal glowing faintly with pale light. "This will shield them from those who hunt their power. But remember, the darkness that seeks them is patient and cunning. You will need courage beyond what you have ever known." Lyra took the pendant, feeling a warmth that seeped into her very bones. She felt the twins stir again, as though they acknowledged the new protector, and a sense of responsibility heavier than any she had carried before settled over her. From the distance came a low, mournful howl, echoing through the veil. Lyra's heart tightened. It was a reminder that she was not alone in her struggle, that forces beyond the mortal realm watched and waited. Suddenly, a shadow shifted behind the trees. Lyra's hand instinctively went to her side, though she carried no weapon. The mist twisted unnaturally, and the air grew thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. "You are being watched," the figure whispered. "The Alpha King may have rejected you publicly, but he does not forget so easily. And there are others older than the throne who covet the power you carry." Lyra swallowed hard, fear and determination warring inside her. She had fallen from the palace's favor, been branded unworthy, and cast into exile. Yet in the veil, amidst the shadows and whispers, she realized something vital. She had the chance to define her own fate, to protect her children and claim their legacy. The night stretched on, long and silent, save for the distant howls and the soft whispers that seemed to emanate from her own heartbeat. Lyra wrapped her cloak tightly around her shoulders, feeling the cool mist seep into her skin, yet also feeling the strange warmth of purpose that glowed brighter than any torch. As the first light of dawn touched the edges of the veil, Lyra rose, determination settling like iron in her chest. She would protect the twins. She would survive. And perhaps, one day she would face Kale again, not as a woman cast aside, but as a mother, a guardian, and a force he could no longer ignore. The veil seemed to breathe with her resolve, the mist parting slightly as if acknowledging her courage. Yet even as hope stirred, the figure in violet watched from the shadows, silent, patient, and knowing that the road ahead would test Lyra in ways she could not yet imagine. And from the depths of the forest, a faint voice carried on the wind whispered a single word: "Prepare." The twins stirred once more, tiny movements beneath her hands, and Lyra understood. Their journey had only begun. Cliffhanger. Beyond the veil, unseen eyes watched her every step. Forces of shadow and ambition stirred, drawn to the life she carried. The path of survival and destiny would demand sacrifices, some of them more painful than exile itself. The mist of Moonshade Vale curled around Lyra like a living thing, wrapping her in a cold embrace that both frightened and strengthened her. She moved carefully along the winding paths, guided by the soft whispers of the unseen spirits that had begun to speak more clearly to her. Their voices were faint at first, like wind rustling through dry leaves, but soon they became vivid, almost urgent. They watch. Always, the voices warned. The blood you carry is not ordinary. The children are the key. Protect them. Lyra tightened her hands over her belly, feeling the tiny movements of the twins as if they themselves understood the warning. She had left the palace, left Kale's gaze burning into her back, and yet a strange thought lingered. The king had not simply turned away. There had been hesitation, something unspoken, something that had touched even his rigid heart. The veil was cruel but alive. Twisted trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches reaching like claws, and the ground was slick with damp leaves. But Lyra was no longer afraid. The pendant given by the violet-robed figure glowed faintly at her chest, a comforting warmth against the chill. She could feel its magic humming, shielding her from unseen eyes. Days passed as she settled in the heart of the vale, crafting a small shelter beneath the roots of an ancient oak. She drew water from a nearby stream and hunted small game, her body growing stronger with every passing day. Yet it was not survival alone that occupied her thoughts. The twins' presence awakened something deep within her, an understanding that their blood was tied to forces older than the palace itself. One evening, as twilight bled into the shadows, Lyra sensed a presence before she saw it. From between the trees stepped a figure, not the violet-robed guide this time, but a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to pierce the mist itself. It was Kale. He moved silently, yet every step carried authority. Lyra's heart stuttered, not from fear but from the mix of emotions that had never left her: anger, hurt, and something she refused to name. "You should not be here," she said firmly, stepping in front of her small shelter. "You rejected me. Why have you come now?" Kale's expression was unreadable. For a moment he looked at her not as a king, but as a man burdened by a choice he had made and regretted. "I did not come to claim you," he said slowly. "I came because there are eyes upon your children, dangerous eyes." "The court underestimated the power you carry." Lyra's gaze narrowed. "And what makes you think I need your protection?" "You do not need mine," Kale admitted, his voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. "But the world does not see the twins as innocents. They see what I have always feared, the strength to challenge even a king." Lyra felt a flicker of something she had tried to bury, an old wound that had never truly healed, and yet, beneath it, a fragile thread of trust began to form. Kale's presence was not the same as it had been in the throne room. He did not command, he did not judge as sharply. He simply watched, as if measuring the woman who had survived exile and grown stronger in his absence. Before she could respond, the ground trembled faintly beneath them. Lyra's hands instinctively went to her stomach. The twins stirred more violently than usual, and a soft light began to emanate from the pendant at her chest. The mist around them thickened, curling into shapes that seemed almost alive. "Stay back," Lyra warned, though her voice trembled slightly. She could feel the magic stirring, not entirely under her control. Kale stepped closer, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I will not touch them. I only wish to help you understand what you carry. The veil is dangerous, yes, but there are worse dangers waiting beyond these shadows. Forces that would use your children's power for their own gain." The warning was enough. Lyra realized that he spoke the truth. Even in exile, even far from the palace, the threat had not disappeared. She glanced around the vale, at the twisted shapes of the trees and the mist that seemed to hide eyes that were not human. It was clear, the twins were not safe, and no magic, no matter how ancient, could protect them alone. Reluctantly she nodded. "Very well. But understand this, Kale, I will not be ordered. I will not be claimed. If we are to face what comes, it will be as allies, nothing more. Do you understand?" Kale's dark eyes softened for the briefest moment. "I understand," he said. "But know this, Lyra, nothing we face will allow either of us to remain untouched. The bond you share with these children will force choices we cannot imagine." Night fell fully, and Kale remained, standing vigil at the edge of her shelter. Neither spoke for hours, listening to the whispering veil and the distant cries of unseen creatures. Slowly, Lyra began to feel that the presence of the king, once a source of fear, was now a shield in its own way. Yet there was tension beneath it, a fragile line between trust and old resentment that could break at any moment. The following days were a careful dance of teaching and watching. Lyra began to sense that the twins' movements were no longer random. They seemed aware, even conscious of the world around them. Small sparks of light flickered from her belly at times, responding to her emotions, fear, joy, anger, or hope. Kale observed silently, always at a distance, yet always near enough to act. He had not come to claim her, and yet his protectiveness betrayed a desire that neither of them spoke aloud. The veil became a crucible, forging not just Lyra's resilience, but the beginnings of something far deeper between them, a recognition of shared responsibility and unspoken longing. One evening, as the fog thickened and the veil seemed to hold its breath, the violet-robed figure appeared once more. Lyra and Kale stood together, facing the enigmatic guide whose eyes gleamed beneath the hood. "You have learned quickly," the figure said, voice calm and resonant. "But the shadow that hunts the twins grows stronger. Soon it will reveal itself. You must be prepared, or all you protect will be lost." Lyra's hand went to her chest over the pendant. "We are ready," she said, though her voice carried uncertainty. The twins stirred, their presence a constant reminder of both hope and peril. The figure's gaze shifted to Kale. "And you must decide whether to remain merely an observer or take the place you were born to hold." The king's duty and the father's heart are not so easily divided. Kale's jaw tightened. He remained silent, understanding the truth in those words. His past pride and fear of vulnerability had nearly destroyed him, and now he was forced to confront what he had denied for so long, the bond that existed between him, Lyra, and the children. Before they could speak further, the veil itself reacted. A low, guttural growl rolled through the mist, and shadows lengthened unnaturally, curling like serpents among the trees. The air grew cold, heavy, almost alive with anticipation. Kale stepped forward, hand resting on the hilt of his sword, eyes scanning the fog. "Something comes," he warned, "and it will not wait for us to be ready." Lyra moved closer to the twins, feeling the pulse of their magic thrumming beneath her skin. Fear and determination mingled in her chest. She realized that the path she had chosen, exile, survival, protection, was only the beginning. The veil, the shadows, the prophecy hinted at by the violet-robed figure, it was all a test, and the twins, innocent though they seemed, were at the center of it. The growl grew louder, closer, echoing through the ancient trees. Shapes began to emerge from the mist, creatures not entirely of this world, eyes glowing with hunger and intent. Lyra instinctively stepped in front of the twins, pendant glowing brighter, shielding them from the first wave of shadows. Kale drew his sword, its steel glinting dimly in the misty moonlight, ready to defend the woman and children he had once rejected, but now could not leave unguarded. The shadows surged forward, and Lyra understood fully. The exile, the rejection, the veil, the unknown powers, none of it had been preparation for peace. It had been preparation for war, for survival, for a bond forged in fire and fear. And in that moment, as mist and darkness swirled around them, Lyra met Kale's gaze. In his eyes she saw something she had never dared to hope for. Not just regret, but a willingness to fight alongside her, to protect the children and perhaps, one day, to redeem the past. Cliffhanger, the shadow creatures lunged from the mist, their glowing eyes fixed on the twins. Lyra's pendant flared brilliantly, and Kale's sword met the first strike. The veil erupted in motion, magic, and steel. What would emerge from this battle? The monsters, the prophecy, or the bond between the king, the exile, and the unborn treasures, remained to be seen. The battle in Moonshade Vale had left the mist thick and heavy, the scent of damp earth and magic hanging in the air. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she steadied herself, her mind still echoing with the roar of shadow creatures that had attacked without warning. The twins stirred within her, tiny hands pressing against her stomach, sensing the danger even before she did. Kale's sword was steady, his presence unwavering, though fatigue etched lines across his face. He had fought not for pride or power, but for her, and for the children he had once denied. There was no audience here, no court, only the veil, its secrets, and the bond that had begun to form between them. "You are strong," Kale said quietly, sheathing his sword. His voice carried no command, only a recognition of the trials she had endured. "Stronger than I imagined." Lyra looked up at him, chest heaving, mist curling around them like living fingers. "I had no choice. They depend on me." Her gaze fell to the twins, and a faint glow shimmered beneath her fingertips as she felt their magic stir. "And perhaps so do you." Kale's dark eyes softened, the hardness of the king giving way to something more vulnerable, more human. "I have been blind," he admitted. "I judged you, the children, and even myself too harshly. I thought power was all that mattered, but seeing you here, surviving this, I see now that courage is what shapes a kingdom." For a long moment they stood in silence, the mist wrapping around them, the veil holding its breath. Lyra felt a warmth in Kale's gaze, a silent acknowledgement that he no longer saw her as a threat or a burden. And for the first time since her exile, she allowed herself a flicker of hope, not just for survival but for something deeper, something she had thought impossible: trust, maybe even love. The violet-robed figure emerged once more from the mist, gliding silently toward them. "The veil has tested you both," the figure said, "but the trials are far from over. The shadow that hunts the children is patient. It waits for weakness, for fear, for the moment when even the strongest falter." Lyra's hands clenched over her stomach. "Then we will not falter. I will protect them no matter what it takes." Kale stepped closer, his presence protective and steady. "And I will stand with you, not as a king commanding obedience, but as someone who finally understands what matters." The figure's hooded head tilted slightly. "Understand this. The magic in these twins is ancient, tied to bloodlines older than your kingdom. If you fail to control it, or if those who envy their power succeed, chaos will fall upon all lands." A shiver ran through Lyra. She had sensed the twins' growing power, their movements and light stirring beyond anything she could control. And yet, she felt that she was not alone anymore. With Kale at her side, she could face what was coming. Days passed as they prepared. Lyra trained the twins, coaxing their magic to respond to her will, while Kale patrolled the veil, ensuring no dark force approached unnoticed. Slowly, a rhythm formed between them. Words were often unnecessary. Glances and gestures conveyed understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the twisted trees and painted the mist with gold and crimson, Kale approached Lyra while she practiced a simple ritual with the twins. Tiny sparks of light danced over her hands as the children responded to her voice, their magic shimmering in sync with their heartbeat. "You have grown remarkable," Kale said softly, leaning against a tree. "I underestimated you. I underestimated them, and perhaps myself." Lyra paused, meeting his gaze. "Why are you really here, Kale? Not as a king, not as a warrior, but as a man." He took a step closer, the mist curling around them. "Because I cannot ignore what I feel. I may have rejected you before, but I see now that the greatest treasure of a kingdom is not power or gold. It is life, courage, and love, even when I am too proud to admit it." Lyra felt her chest tighten, a mix of fear and longing. She wanted to trust him, but past wounds ran deep. "We have little time for this," she said, though her voice softened. "The shadows are coming. We must focus on the twins." Kale's gaze did not waver. "I know. But the bond we forge now, it will be the strength that keeps us alive. And perhaps someday it will heal what was broken." That night, the mist thickened unnaturally, carrying with it whispers not of the veil but of dark ambition. Shadows moved between the trees, silent and watchful, drawn to the twins' growing magic. Lyra's instincts flared, and she clutched the pendant at her chest. The glow intensified, surrounding the children in a shield of protective light. Cale took his position beside her, sword drawn, eyes scanning the mist. "They are here," he murmured. "Prepare yourself." The creatures emerged, shapes darker than the night, with eyes like embers burning in the fog. They did not rush but circled, testing, waiting. Lyra felt the twins respond, a pulse of energy building beneath her hands, wild and untamed. "Steady," she whispered to them, though her voice trembled. "We will not be afraid. We will fight together." Cale's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent promise. Together they drew strength from each other, blending courage and magic, steel and resolve. The shadows lunged, and the veil erupted in a clash of light and dark, of power and will. Lyra felt the twins' magic respond to her fear, anger, and hope, flaring outward like a storm of sparks. Cale's blade met the shadows, each strike precise and powerful, protecting her and the children. They fought as one, not king and exile, not man and woman, but as guardians of life itself. The battle seemed endless, and yet slowly the shadows began to retreat. Their cries echoed through the trees, a warning rather than a defeat. Lyra sank to her knees, trembling as the twins settled quietly beneath her hands, their magic flickering like fading stars. Cale knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. "All of you. I see now, they are the treasures I did not know I was meant to protect." Lyra looked up at him, her heart pounding. "And you are the protector I did not believe could change. Perhaps we are stronger together than we were apart." Cale's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment the weight of past pride and mistakes lifted. He saw in Lyra not just a mother, but a woman of courage, wisdom, and strength beyond measure. He saw the twins not just as heirs of power, but as symbols of hope, resilience, and the possibility of redemption. The violet-robed figure appeared once more, stepping silently through the mist. "You have survived the first trial," the figure said. "But know this, greater darkness approaches. The prophecy will not wait, and those who covet the twins' power are patient and cunning. You must be ready, or the kingdom and all you love will fall." Lyra rose, clutching the twins to her chest. "Then we will be ready," she said. "We will not falter again." Cale nodded, a new resolve settling over him. "We will face whatever comes together. I will not abandon you or them again." The figure's hooded head tilted and with a final whisper vanished into the mist. "Remember, the true battle is yet to come." As night deepened over Moonshade Vale, Lyra and Cale stood side by side, watching over the twins. The bond between them had shifted, no longer merely of circumstance, but of trust, respect, and the fragile beginnings of love. Yet even in this rare moment of peace, the air was thick with anticipation. From the shadows, a faint rustle. The veil held its breath. Eyes unseen were watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The twins stirred again, their magic pulsing stronger, as if aware of the looming danger. Lyra looked at Cale, the fire of determination in her eyes mirrored in his. "Whatever comes," she said softly, "we face it together. No matter the cost." Cale nodded, his jaw firm. Together, and in that shared promise the storm of the future began to gather, unseen but inevitable. Cliffhanger. From the darkness beyond the veil, a figure moved silently, a rival who sought the twins' power for their own. The bond of Lyra, Cale, and the children would soon be tested in ways they could not yet imagine, as the shadows of the kingdom stirred and ancient forces awoke. Moonshade Vale had grown silent under the pale light of dawn, but the stillness was deceptive. Lyra stood at the edge of the misty clearing, the twins pressed gently against her chest, their soft movements a reminder of the life and power they carried. Cale was beside her, sword in hand, eyes scanning the shadows that clung to the edges of the forest like predators. The time has come, Kale said, his voice steady but low. The one who seeks the twins has arrived. We must not fail. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she touched the pendant at her chest, feeling the warmth pulse through her. I know, she said. They will not survive alone. And neither will we. From the depths of the veil, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, with eyes that burned like fire in the mist. The rival who sought the twins' power moved with confidence, its presence a chilling echo of ambition and darkness. Shadows followed in its wake, twisting unnaturally as though the very forest obeyed its will. Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the approaching figure. You will not take them, he said, his tone absolute. His hands gripped the hilt of his sword tighter, muscles coiling with controlled strength. The figure laughed, low and bitter. You think you can protect them, Alpha King. A king who once rejected what is most precious to him. The voice carried a mocking edge, but beneath it lurked a dangerous curiosity. The children are the key to power older than even you understand. Hand them over or be destroyed. Lyra's breath caught. She had never feared death, not truly, but the safety of the twins was all that mattered. She felt their magic stir, responding to the threat, responding to her own courage. You will not touch them, she said firmly, lifting her hands. Light shimmered from the pendant, spreading outward in a protective shield around her and the twins. Sparks danced in the air as the shadows of the veil recoiled. Kale moved closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. They are stronger than you think, he said quietly. And so are we together. The figure sneered, stepping into the circle of light. Very well, it hissed. Then face the power you were too blind to embrace. The first attack came swiftly. Shadows lunged from the mist, their forms twisting and writhing as they struck at Lyra and Kale. Lyra's pendant flared brightly, and she felt the twins' energy surge within her, guiding her hands to deflect the darkness. Sparks of light collided with the shadows, creating bursts of brilliance in the dim forest. Kale's blade flashed with precision, each strike cutting through the darkness. His movements were fluid, protective, and purposeful, driven not just by duty, but by the bond he now felt with Lyra and the twins. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of strength, not domination, but protection, trust, and courage born of love. Lyra felt the twins respond to her voice, their tiny power flowing outward like threads of light, intertwining with Kale's strikes and forming a shield of both magic and steel. The forest trembled around them, the shadows recoiling yet persistent. You are stronger together than apart, the figure hissed, its form growing larger, the dark energy coalescing into a massive shape. But strength alone will not save you. Lyra's heart pounded. Fear rose, but so did determination. We do not fight alone, she whispered. We fight as one. The twins' energy surged violently, a pulse of light that radiated from her body, illuminating the veil. The shadows faltered, wavering in the brilliance. Lyra felt a strange warmth, a bond forming not just with her children but with Kale, as if their courage and unity were amplifying the magic. Kale's eyes met hers and he nodded. Now, he said, together. They advanced as one, Lyra guiding the twins' magic with careful precision, Kale striking with the strength of a king who had learned humility, regret, and love. The shadows screamed, twisting in desperation, but the combined force of Lyra's will, the twins' power, and Kale's might proved unstoppable. The cloaked figure shrieked, its control over the shadows faltering. Light and steel converged, and with a final surge of energy from the twins, the darkness shattered, scattering into nothingness. The veil fell silent once more, the mist curling softly around the trees as if acknowledging the victory. Lyra sank to her knees, the twins safe and quiet beneath her hands. Kale knelt beside her, his armor glinting faintly in the pale light. He placed a hand over hers, over the pendant, over the children, and for a moment, all the tension of the past months seemed to dissolve. They are safe, Kale said quietly, because of you, because of us. Lyra looked at him, the weight of their journey pressing upon her heart. Because of all of us, she corrected softly, and because they are not afraid to fight even in their own way. The mist began to lift, sunlight piercing through the dense canopy above. The vale, once a place of exile and shadow, now felt alive with hope. Lyra breathed deeply, feeling the twins stir gently, as though acknowledging the new world they had helped create. Cale's gaze fell upon her, and for the first time he saw her not as a threat, not as a burden, but as the mother of his children, the woman who had survived exile, danger, and betrayal. His heart, long closed off by duty and pride, opened to something he had denied himself for too long: love. "Lyra," he said softly, I was blind before. I rejected what was most precious to me because I did not understand. But now I see clearly. You and them, you are my treasures, all three of you." Lyra's chest tightened. She had expected words, perhaps, but not this confession, not this raw truth from a man who had once condemned her. A warmth spread through her, and she realized that forgiveness was not just for Cale, it was for herself as well. She could finally release the hurt of rejection, even as she embraced the hope of unity. "I forgive you," she whispered, placing her hands over his. "And I will stand with you, not because I must, but because I choose to." Cale's hand tightened over hers, and together they rose, the twins nestled safely between them. The sunlight glinted in the children's hair, tiny sparks of their magic reflecting in the light. For the first time, the treasures were united, not by title or obligation, but by bond, choice, and love. The violet-robed figure appeared one last time, hovering just beyond the clearing. "You have done well," it said. "The shadows retreat for now. But remember, power such as theirs will always draw eyes, always stir ambition. Guard them, nurture them, and teach them well. They are the hope of more than one kingdom." Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of her own heart and the support of Cale by her side. "We will protect them," she said, "whatever comes." The figure inclined its head, then vanished into the mist, leaving the vale quiet, peaceful, and strangely alive with light. Cale turned to Lyra, the expression on his face softer, more human than she had ever seen. "We have survived exile, betrayal, shadows, and doubt," he said. "Perhaps this is our true beginning, not as king and subject, but as guardians, as a family, as something more." Lyra smiled, a gentle, hopeful smile. "Something more," she echoed. And in that moment, the veil seemed to breathe with them, acknowledging the bond, the courage, and the love that had been forged in fire, darkness, and perseverance. From the far edge of the forest, a faint breeze carried whispers, not of fear, but of promise. Life, magic, and destiny intertwined in ways even they could not yet see. The twins stirred once more, tiny hands reaching outward, their magic glowing softly, a gentle pulse that promised a future both uncertain and bright. Lyra felt Cale's hand over hers again, steady and warm, and she knew that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together. The shadows may linger, the world may test them, but the bond of their three treasures was unbreakable. As the sun fully rose over Moonshade Vale, Lyra, Cale, and the twins stepped forward together, ready to face a kingdom that had once rejected them, a world that now had to recognize the strength of courage, love, and unity. Final cliffhanger. Even as the veil glimmered with light, a distant shadow stirred beyond the horizon, a reminder that the power of the twins was a beacon drawing attention from unseen forces. Their journey was not over, but for now the three treasures were together, their bond unshakable, their hearts ready for the trials yet to come.